So again, we want to solve this equation. Right now, it's really hard to tell what kind of equation it is because there's so much going on. So, like I said, in solving more difficult equations, these steps can be used. So again, this handout is printable. So if you want to print this out, you can for your own notes, or you can just write these notes down however you'd like to do it, and just put them in your little notebook. So if I want to simplify each side of the equation by removing parentheses, if you look at this problem, notice how there are parentheses here. So I do want to simplify this by removing parentheses. So remember, this is distributive property. Distributive property, the outside number gets multiplied through the addition. So I have to multiply this 3 times 4, which is going to be 12, and then 3 times 3x is going to be 9x. So that's going to remove the parentheses over there. The same way on this side over here, this 8's got to multiply through the parentheses. So 8 times x is going to be 8x, and 8 times -1 is going to be a -8. So we just write it down like that. Again, you can write plus -8, but in algebra, a plus -8 is not necessary. They just write it as a -8. Because remember, terms are really seen as additions. So this really means a 12, a 9x on this side, and then an 8x and a -8 on the other side as terms go. So technically, that's a plus -8. We just write it as a -8 in algebra. So we simplified each side using distributive property. Notice how there's not any like terms. 12 and 9x are not like terms. 8x and -8 are not like terms, because remember, to be like terms, they have to have the same variable with the same exponent, and they don't. So we're done simplifying. So this brings us down to this next step, which is if the variable is on both sides, pick on the little guy. Use a zero pair. So if you look at this problem, notice how there's a 9x here and an 8x over here on this other side. So there is a variable on each side of the equation. Picking on the little guy, I would consider the 8x to be the little guy. And again, it doesn't really matter who you call the little guy. Technically, it doesn't matter. But for me, 8x is the little guy. And so I want to zero it out by using its opposite. So I'm going to put a -8x there or a -8x there, as long as I put a -8x on the third side to keep the equations equivalent, balanced. So notice how this 12 is going to come down. 9 and a -8x is just going to leave me a 1x, or we just simply put x. And on the right-hand side, the 8x's are going to zero out, which is going to leave me 0 and a -8, which is just going to be a -8. So that's now got x on one side. Our next goal is now to solve for x by getting x by itself. So use a zero pair for the constant. So notice how this x is already over here on the left side. I like that already. To use a zero pair on the constant, the 12 is called the constant because the constant's the piece without the variable. So the -12 is going to be the constant. So I'm going to zero it out with the -12, but I have to put a -12 on the other side of the equation to keep it balanced. So notice how the 12 and the -12 will zero out. 0 plus x is going to be x. A -8 and a -12 would actually be a -20. Because remember, if you have like signs, you just simply add and keep the signs. So 8 plus 12 is 20. And a negative plus negative is just a bigger negative. Notice that the coefficient of x is already 1. So we're done. X equals -20 is our solution. Now, if we want to check that to make sure it actually is correct, we can substitute -12 into the left side. This would be 3 in parentheses 4 plus 3 times -20. And then close parenthesis. So the left side would be -168. If I do the right-hand side, that's going to be 8 times then a -20 minus 1. So if I substitute -20 in for x over here, that gives me a -168 as well. So since the left side and right side are both the same, that means -20 was our solution. So in our little braces, we're going to just put a -20 in. So we don't have to put x equals -20. When you're using braces, we just write it as the -20. So don't put the x there.